Pop Culture Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm Brad.
I'm Pete.
And I'm Giff.
Good throat clearing, guys.
Thanks.
Well,
So,
this is an exciting show. We got to make sure our voices are ready.
Mhm.
Well, it is exciting because there's 5 Mondays in August, so we had to come up with another thing to talk about.
God, will this month ever end?
Best month ever. Bonus
And-
fly.
We
What?
threw out
Oh.
Hello?
Hello?
We threw out an SOS to our Buy Me a Coffee people to see if they had anything they wanted us to talk about.
And they
Or
did.
even invited them to join, but nobody took us up on that one this time. But we did get from my sister, Danica, big fan of the show. I think she's got big fans out there.
Yes, she does.
And she told us we should talk about Arrested Development. Or she also said Lost, but we will probably do a Lost episode later, I'm guessing.
Yep.
So, because that was big for me and GIF.
Sure was.
So Arrested Development, we are going to talk about tonight, and I thought that was a great pick. And I have watched this series, although I think I'm going to watch it again because... So did you guys hadn't watched any of it? Is that the case?
I had started watching it a few years ago when it came on Netflix. And then I stopped watching. I think I got through the first maybe 6 episodes. And then for tonight's episode, I watched, I think, the first 7 and then the 2 we're going to talk about. No, the first 7 and then the first 4 of season 2 I watched.
Pete?
So
I never really watched it. Maybe I had seen an episode or 2 back in the day. I vaguely remember, some of the characters and what it's about, but I had never really gotten into it like you did, Brad. But I will say a little foreshadowing here. I thought based on the 2 episodes that we did watch, I definitely am going to go back and rewatch it or start watching it.
And it was, canceled early,
Mhm.
which it shouldn't have been. But I mean, so it's not overwhelming though. It's the kind of series you can go back and watch. It's not like 200 episodes to get through. So
well, they're
that's the good part.
22 minutes an episode. I mean,
Yeah.
they fly through them.
So I'm trying to remember. I knew the show was great when it came out. Everybody talked about it. And I feel like, so it started in 2003, right?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yep.
so it didn't start in 2005, but it was a big show in 2005. That's why it worked for this month here. I don't know if I've ever watched all of the first season or not. I know I got into it somewhere in there, and I watched it, and it's the kind of show that I don't remember it very well. Like there aren't specific things or specific episodes to stand out like usually happens. And I think that's partly because, and she wrote this here, you have to give so much attention to this show when you're watching it.
Yes.
Like there's just
Mhm.
so much.
There's so much going on.
And I don't think
Quick
I
lines.
was always giving it
Well-
that attention. And so a lot of it went right over my head and I missed it. And then, so I could say I watched the series, but like I didn't really enjoy the series as I should have. So I'm glad to go back here and probably do it again.
Well, that's a point that I kind of had too. I had written down that at least based on the episodes that we watched, it seems like there's about 17 different subplots in the show, and they all just kind of interweave themselves so perfectly, and then they all tie together at the end, and it's just hilarious because
And it's
you
just-
forget about. Sorry, I was just going to say you forget about one thing is going on, and then it comes back later, and it's just like,
Right.
oh yeah,
I think a part of it is because there are all these plots and things happening, but there's the constant narration. And so
Yes.
if you don't pay attention to the narration going on, you
Mhm.
miss out on so much of it. So I did ask Danica to give me a few notes as to why she thought we should talk about it. So she did, and some of these are about the second episode we're going to talk about, so I'll save those. But overall, she said that this is a show she remembered watching from the minute it came out, and it was very different and weird, but the characters were hilarious and amazing, and so she just loved it right away. When she rewatched it, it reminded her how almost every single line or scene is a joke. And so this is where, like I was just saying, and she brought this up too. So when we watch shows now, if you watch a show with my family, everybody's on their phone the whole time, and it drives me insane. And I'm like, can we just put our phones away just to watch a movie together as a family or watch a show? And I've given up because they think I'm just crazy, and I find it annoying. Now, my wife's really good at multitasking. Half the time she's on her phone, she can tell me stuff that's going on that I'm missing, not on my phone. But still, it's like, why can't we just enjoy one thing at a time? And so what Danica said is, this is a show you cannot be on your phone when watching it because you're going to miss everything. And so in 2005, and when this first came out, we weren't on our phones, and so it worked better because your attention span, you were focused on the show.
Right.
Sorry, what were you saying? Something, Brad? I was just on my phone.
Two other observations she had were about the characters. So Jason Bateman's character, she compared, is a happier, less dark version of Marty Byrde from Ozark. Because Jason Bateman, he always looks like the same guy. And that's I agree with that. Mm-hmm. And Tony Hale's character, Buster, is a goofier, childish version of Gary in Veep.
Yep.
But they're also kind of the same character. And so I thought those were good comparisons because it was quite the way I would look at them too.
Yeah, I'd give you that.
So those are two of our main characters.
Yes.
Who else is on this show?
The character that stands out to me, and I love this actor. I've seen him in other things before. Jeffrey Tambor. Is that how it's pronounced?
Tambor.
Oh my God.
There's a B.
There's a B in there.
Oh, I must have typed it wrong off of the thing. But him and, of course, Michael Cera never fails.
And he's so young.
He plays,
he's so little.
He plays that role just perfectly. He's basically the same character in every movie, but it's just hilarious. The like sarcasm, and like he is exactly like any of us when we were that age. It's like that awkward teenager.
Mm-hmm. And so have you only watched the 2 episodes, adults. Pete?
Yes.
Because if you go back, I think it's more in season 1, but the funniest arc with him is he meets his cousin who he doesn't know very well, and he's like constantly in love with her, and like it's this weird, awkward, like he thinks she likes him, but he knows it's wrong, and the whole thing is just hilarious. And it sounds like maybe it's gross, but it's not. It's just hilarious, and he's just so confused, and he's the perfect guy to pull that off.
Well, and he's so soft spoken.
Yeah.
So, he doesn't assert himself the way he would like to. And yeah, that whole relationship between those two is, it's very awkward, but it's so cute too, because he's just this little, he's still got like baby fat, like his cheeks, you think of Michael Cera in like Superbad, and he's older. Yeah, it's just so fun to see him in this role.
So just a quick overview if you don't know the show. So the main character is Michael, which is Jason Bateman. But it's all this family. So his parents are Jeffrey Tambor, who Pete brought up, and Jessica Walter. And they're just terrible, oblivious. His dad's in jail for half of it and hiding, and he's never around because he's running a business and breaking the law. She's nuts.
Yep.
He's got a twin sister, Lindsay, who's Portia DeRossi, and then an older brother, Job, who is Will Arnett, who we didn't bring up yet, but he's fantastic in everything.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And it's spelled G-O-B, so people usually pronounce it Gob.
Gob.
Yeah. But it's Job. And then Tony Hale, Buster, is his younger brother, and then his son is George Michael, who is Michael Cera.
Yep. Named after
the cousin,
Grandpa.
Maybe. Yep. I can't think of her real name, but
Elia
Shawkat. Shawkat, yeah, something like that. And then there's also Mae Whitman, who's been in a lot of stuff, but she's way young here. She's his like love interest, and that's one of the funnier parts too. And that is in these episodes that we're going to talk about. And
now, is that sorry, when you said that his name is George Michael? Is that like an ongoing kind of a joke too, that he's named after, or that his name
His
is
dad's
George
name
Michael?
is George, and his name is Michael.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Grandpa's George.
but do they make
And-
fun of the fact that it's of George Michael, the singer? You know?
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
That's just a fun little thing. And the
Okay.
fact that they call him George Michael every single time.
I didn't know if it was like a Michael Bolton thing in Office Space, where it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
they keep.
Yeah.
Henry Winkler's also on this show. He's a lawyer for the family.
Yes,
He's
And
great.
he's fantastic.
Don't forget about our narrator, Ron Howard.
Ron
Mhm.
Howard narrates.
Yep.
What an all-star cast.
I mean, and who are
Yeah.
we missing? Anybody here? Oh, David Cross is
David
Lindsay's
Cross.
husband,
Tobias.
who is closeted, secret, doesn't know that he's gay, and he's got all these crazy things going on in his life, and their relationship is ridiculous, but he's great.
Yep. So for me, right off the bat, if you watch the very first episode, the Bluth Corporation, run by the grandfather, Tambor, George, gets busted by the securities agency for fraud, and he goes to prison. So now it's up to Michael, who is the only responsible child in this family, to kind of run things and try to keep everybody's, head above water. So right off the bat, this show reminds me a little bit of Schitt's Creek in the setup of it, and how you have a prominent family, lose their money, and you've got one character, Johnny Rose, the dad from Schitt's Creek, who's level-headed and trying to get things back on track, and everybody else is just a socialite. Things were easy for them throughout their lives, and they just don't know how to handle it. The difference between Arrested and Schitt's Creek is that I think in Schitt's Creek, Moira and David and Alexis had some redeeming qualities. Whereas,
yes. Well, and they grow to have them even if they don't at first.
Right. Yes, exactly. They
grow up.
Acquire them quicker. Whereas in Arrested, at least as far as I've watched, the rest of the family is almost proud to be piles of crap.
Yeah. I don't think the characters ever really change. That's a big difference between the two shows.
Yes,
but the setup is very similar.
Yeah, and basically you've got a situation where everybody else in this family besides Michael is almost actively trying to sabotage themselves, as far as getting anywhere out of, into a better position, and they're almost happy to be stupid or not helpful. They're all very selfish.
Yes.
So that's kind of a quick little overview of the series as a whole that I've seen so far.
And I thought the intro for somebody that has not watched the show before, the intro to the show actually explains the plot pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can kind of pick up on it. And the first of the two episodes that we'll discuss, you pick up on that pretty quickly, what's going on. It's not like, oh my God, I'm totally lost. You pick up on that pretty quickly.
I watched the first episode tonight, and I think it's really helpful to watch that one. But
yes,
you're right. They do give that overview.
Yep.
We should mention, too, that Jeffrey Tambor, the dad, George, actually plays two characters. He also plays the uncle, the long-haired, hippie-looking uncle, Oscar, who's got his own thing with George's wife.
Right.
There's just so much going on.
And that thing is called Buster, his own thing with,
that they keep having to show the blue circle.
Oh, yes, that. But we come to find out that Buster is not George's son, but actually Oscar's son from an affair earlier in life.
All right, so the two episodes that were chosen that we're going to talk about here. The second one we're going to talk about was the one that Danica really remembered, and I can see why.
I can see why.
We'll get there. And then she picked one just a couple before that. So they're both from season 2. So we're going to start with season 2, episode 2, which is called The One Where They Build a House. And so the beginning of this ties right in with everything you just said. So it starts with they're out of money, and Michael's trying to come up with a way for them to make more money again, because They got to do something.
Mm-hmm. They need a business model.
Yeah, a new business model. And there is a business model. One of my favorite bits in this whole show, one thing that I do remember from watching it is when David Cross, Tobias, tried to join the Blue Man group. And he's always wearing the blue paint. And he shows up early in this episode, and he's still got the paint around his neck. He didn't get it, and there's paint on the wall.
Yes.
And it's just everywhere.
Yep.
And his character is he is the biggest joke of everybody, and I love him.
Well, and the other thing I love about that blue paint is, like, when we get to our later episode that we're going to discuss, there's still blue paint on the walls. Like, they never do anything to clean up the mess that this family makes throughout the show. What I did like about the Blue Man Group is the reason he went to see the Blue Man Group was because he was depressed and he thought it was a support group for men that were blue.
So he also is currently in an open marriage with Lindsay.
Yes.
Which makes sense because, and if you watch the very first episode, it mentions that she married him as a way to like rebel against her family.
It was out of spite.
There was never anything there, and it's not like, but they do have a kid. Maybe is their kid.
Yep.
But they have an open marriage, and they're together, but they are not sexually active.
Yes.
With each other.
Well,
we then meet George Michael.
Yep.
And so he wants to bring his current girlfriend, Anne, to this ribbon, because they're going to build a new model home. And they always have a ribbon cutting. That's a big thing in the blues, is to have a ribbon cutting.
Yep.
And these are some of the lines my sister brought up that I had also written down. But I just love, he says, can I bring Anne to his dad, Jason Bateman? And he says, who? I haven't met Anne. And then he goes, she's right over there. She's sitting in the house.
Wasn't it like you let her in the house?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. She's like invisible to everybody.
Yes.
Particularly to Michael. But
yes,
it just seems to be a running thing where no matter how many times he's met this girl, he's still oblivious to who she is.
He starts calling her Egg.
Egg. Well, and that's because of the man egg.
Man egg.
Yes.
Which is what?
That is where
and George Michael telling a story, he just thinks it's so cute how she does this, and it's his whole way of telling it is just he's so proud.
What Anne will do is she will take a packet of mayonnaise and squeeze it into her mouth, and then take a hard-boiled egg and put it in to her mouth and eat it. And I think Michael, after hearing that, goes, "I don't feel real well right now," or something like that.
And then he starts calling her Egg.
Yes. Well, and you talk about the ribbon cutting. I thought that was funny how the narrator is describing the historic ribbon cuttings that they've had. That was one of George's schemes, was after he built something, he'd have a big promotional ribbon cutting to get buzz about the new build. And one of the ribbon cuttings was at the Orange County prison where he now resides.
Yes.
Right.
After this, we meet Job, who is currently the president of the company.
In name only.
Yeah. And I love this line that he has. Is he talking about being president, or was it something he says, there's not a lot of logic to it. Kind of like when you're on a boat, women and children first.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense.
Well, and the reason, and we talk about a boat because, of course, again, him actively trying not to help anything in this situation, he bought a new corporate boat, and the boat's name was?
I forget.
The C Word.
Oh, yeah, the C Word.
As an SEA word.
But then
like
they played
WARD like it's C word.
Yes.
Michael says something about, you got to get rid of the C word, and his mom walks in and says, don't call me that.
The next thing I had down was Buster.
Buster, yes.
Is going into the Army. He was volunteered by Lucille for the Army. And of course, Buster's got to be what, late 20s, early 30s?
Oh, he's got to be over 30, I think.
Right. So he goes in for his Army physical. And of course, there's no way he would pass an Army physical. And one of the things I thought was funny that he was telling the person giving him the physicals, he goes, I'm legally blind at night. I mean, he passes out. He has horrible panic attacks at the drop of a hat and then passes out. Like he
can't do anything of any kind. He
legally shouldn't be able to drive. I mean, because he would pass out, so, but the army does accept him in because they're taking everybody at this time.
Right. So
he walks in on his mom and uncle too, and they like get off each other. But then this is a good running gag. Every time we see Uncle Oscar, there's a blue dot over his crotch because he's always got an erection.
Right. Is that a continuing thing throughout the series?
Oh, I'm just saying in this episode.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't think it's beyond.
Okay.
We got another character, another great actor who shows up. So with the dad in Mexico is Judy Greer.
Yes.
And I can't remember. I didn't write anything down about who she is or why she's there. But I love Judy.
She is his longtime secretary that he's been having an affair with forever.
Ah, okay.
George's longtime secretary. Well, what I thought was funny is George has escaped to Mexico, and unfortunately, his twin brother, Oscar, is wanted in Mexico for selling weed. So he gets arrested. And there's always a scene every time. So anyway, George has escaped prison earlier in the series, and Oscar keeps getting jumped by the police because they think he's George and, he's an escaped convict. So the police will tackle him, and then there's always the last cop that comes by with the billy club and hits him in the head. Well, the same thing happens to George when he's mistaken for Oscar in Mexico, and the police grab him and take him to the ground, and then one guy comes running up with the billy club and whacks him right in the back while he's down. Just a fun little gag they keep going with.
We've then got Lindsay, who is trying to work on this open marriage. Like, they're both basically intimidating each other into like going out and trying to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And so she finds this homeless guy, and I love how they go to the liquor store together so she can buy a beer. And she doesn't get.
She doesn't realize that he's homeless. She thinks that he's hot.
Yes.
But
and he is actually an actor, but she just never. She doesn't.
So the guy playing the homeless man is the actor Thomas Jane.
Yes.
Who is a real life actor, and it comes to pass that he's actually like trying to be in character for his roles. And so that's why she thinks he's hot, because, well, Thomas Jane is a good looking man. And so, yeah, she thinks he's homeless, and then still never catches on to the fact that he's an actual.
He keeps saying, I'm Tom Jane.
Yeah, I'm Thomas Jane. And she has no idea who Thomas Jane is. Yeah.
And that actor, by the way, that's his real name, the actor's real name. And he was basically replicating his real life story. He came to Hollywood as a homeless man in real life. And so that's basically he had no money, and he lived as a homeless man for a while before he got.
You coming with the fun facts?
Yeah. Throw that one out there.
That's awesome.
Job is always doing magic, and he does magic at the company meeting, and I love he throws it up and he's all excited, and you look on the table, it's all pennies.
Yeah, he takes a $100 bill,
and everybody's like grabbing at him like it's a big deal.
Yeah. So he holds up a $100 bill, and he says, "Is this a $100 bill or 100 pennies?" And he throws his hands up, and then all these 100 pennies come flying out, and of course the board members, they eat it up because they like magic. And Michael points out that as president, you've already lost us $99. So Michael has this idea to build a house. He's going to start phase two. They're going to build a house in 2 months. They're going to have a ribbon cutting to show the board, hey, we're back on track. We'll get more investment money, and this will really work. Well, Job decides this is, and he's going to do it in 2 months. And he says, well, I have the business model, so we're going to go my way with this. And Job comes up with, instead of 2 months, we're going to do it in 2 weeks because he's the president and he can make everything happen. And he does have a business model.
That's correct.
And did you notice who she is?
I didn't look it up, but yes, she's very familiar.
It's Joan Calamezzo from Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec, that's right. Okay, thank you.
So to explain to the audience, when he means business, he says business model, and then he brings in an actual spokesmodel that's wearing like a bikini and stuff like that.
She was the one that he met when he bought the corporate boat. She was at the boat show
Yes.
in front of the C word that he was interested in.
The C word. So they do get the house built for the ribbon cutting, but when they cut the ribbon, it's just 4 walls and it falls down.
Right. This was Job's plan. It doesn't need to be a real house.
Buster looks at it as his opportunity to get injured and get out of the army, and he goes and stands in front of the falling wall, and then it's an open door window, and he doesn't even get hit.
Like a Charlie Chaplin,
which
comedy.
Not Charlie Chaplin. It's an homage to a classic Buster Keaton scene.
Buster Keaton. Thank you, Pete.
So I think it's the Buster tie-in, and so that was in 1928. Mm-hmm. It actually happened twice in 2 different movies. They did the same gag in the films 1 Week and Steamboat Bill in 1928.
Well, and of course, when the house falls apart, the 4 walls fall down. Lucille and Oscar are inside the house having sex with each
other. There's also a good Michael and Job are fighting through the whole thing, and they keep doing rock, paper, scissors.
Yes.
And after the house falls down, it culminates in a real life rock. They got the giant scissors for the ribbon cutting, and then the other one picks up a rock, and they fight each other with a real rock and a real scissors.
So the one thing I wrote down that I really loved was right before the ribbon cutting, Job is lowered in by crane, so it's a big entrance for him. Yes. And as he's being lowered down, a banner on the house also lowers, and it says "Mission Accomplished."
Yes.
Which, a little jab at old W there on the aircraft carrier. So I thought that was apt.
And the episodes always end with "on the next Arrested Development." And Pete, maybe you don't know this for sure because you've only watched these 2. But maybe you figured these are always just made up scenes. These are not on the next episode. I was wondering that.
Yeah. Because I kind of figured that out after watching the second one.
They're part of the episode. My favorite part in this one is they show, Tobias, who was in the Blue Man group, he's now covered head to toe in diamond dust. Mm-hmm. And he's all like gold and glittery because they kept talking about diamond dust, which was this lotion. Throughout, and they had talked about that, and George Michael wanted to give some to Anne, but in the end, it ended up being that Tobias covered his entire body with it, and he looks again hilarious.
Well, and that ties into one of the other great things from this episode was Tobias was trying to, he was going to audition to be in the Blue Man group, so he's covered his body in blue, and throughout the episode, he's following his wife Lindsay around on her rendezvous for the open marriage, and he always camouflages himself on something that's blue because then he mixes in with it. So it's so great, just these little gags that they put together. But it all works because he's wearing blue. And then was it the next episode where he gets hit, or is that this episode where he's got by a car?
I can't remember.
Because I watched the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in a row. Anyway, there's a part where he's walking at dusk. He's got all this blue paint on, and a car runs into him because they can't see him because he blends perfectly into the blue sky. So, there's all kinds of things they do.
All right, then in the other episode that we watched, and this is the one that was chosen even more, it's episode 4, so it's 2 after the one we just watched, and it's called Good Grief. And Good Grief, that's a very famous saying by Charlie Brown. Mm-hmm. And this episode has a very large Charlie Brown theme through it, and that's one of the reasons I'm sure why it stood out. It's very memorable, but we all grew up watching those, and my sister loves it too, I'm sure. So that's, I'm sure, a big reason why this one stood out. But then, and I'll get her notes as we go through it, but this one is just, there's so many funny things.
Yes.
In this episode. But that awesome running Charlie Brown theme makes it even better.
Yep. So the first thing I have down for this episode is Michael and Job are at work, and Job comes into Michael's office, and he goes, "Did you see the new poof?"
Poof.
Now, again, Job is a magician, and he's referring to the magazine Poof, the magic magazine. But of course, Michael takes it as he's talking about one of their coworkers. So after Job says, "Have you seen the new Poof?" Michael looks at him and goes, "His name is Gary."
But did you notice who's in the magazine Poof?
Yes, I did.
No,
You
I
did
want
it?
to give her the chance.
He
Didn't get it, Pete. Who is it?
Ben Stiller.
It's Ben Stiller.
Oh, yes, I did. Okay, yep.
Who I think, if I read this right, he did this as a little thing there, but I think he comes in on an episode later on as that character in the magazine. Maybe only one episode, but I think he makes a real appearance later on.
It wasn't in the original cut. Ben Stiller being on that magazine was not in the original cut. But then a little bit later, after it was cut, they found out that they were going to get him for a future episode, and they went back and edited him in.
And you are on fire here tonight.
Yes, all over it.
All right, so they find their dad in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Oscar still has an erection.
Yes. Well,
my notes here. I can't. There's so much going. So where do they find the dad?
The dad is in Mexico.
Mexico.
He's not back yet, but they
know
where he is.
They have a private investigator.
Right.
There's a family private investigator.
Ice.
Who's the actor who plays? No, the older gentleman.
I don't remember.
But anyway, they've had this private investigator. Lucille gets him on the track of trying to find the husband. But his entrance into every scene, he's always in character. And every time he reveals himself, Lucille just goes nuts. Like, she just loves that he's tricked her again. Was his name Pennywise, or what the heck was the guy's name?
Well, while we're looking that up, this is 2 episodes later from the one we just watched, but there's a phone call here, and Michael calls Anne Egg again on the phone call here.
Yes.
But we do meet, this is where we meet Henry Winkler, at least in these episodes.
Yep.
Who, funny, his name is Barry.
I wrote that down.
And now he's on Barry
Mm-hmm.
and doing just a great job on one of the best shows. But Ice is a bounty hunter / caterer.
Yes.
Who tells them that their dad is dead. They found him, but he's dead. And so that's all going to tie together, the catering part here a little bit later.
Yep.
This is one of my favorite lines. Buster shows up, and they're like, "Buster, aren't you supposed to be in the army today?" And he's like, "Oh, we're home. We had a half army day."
We had a half day. The army had a half day. So they don't tell Buster that Dad has died, because that would
nobody will tell him because he won't take it well.
Complete tailspin. So they're telling him it's his birthday.
One of the many storylines. Yes.
So George Michael breaks up with Anne, and that's our first.
And then we see him walking.
Yep.
With his head down and his arms at his sides, not moving. And The Christmas Time Is Here by Charlie Brown is playing.
Sad.
And a couple walks by carrying a Christmas tree.
And he walks by a Snoopy house.
Yep, with a dog on top of the dog house.
And when he comes in, he just completely collapses straight down into the ground face first.
Right.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, so good.
So that was one of the things my sister had written down was the Charlie Brown music and the walk she loved. And you brought up, Gifford, there's no Blue Man Group in here, but even in this you still see the blue paint smudges on the walls, and so it's always there. Oh, and then every single scene Buster's in, that's all she wrote. Anything Buster's in is just great.
Oh, well, when he shows up to the birthday party, the wake, he needs to be wearing an army uniform because everybody still thinks he's in the army. And Job tells him, "Well, I have an army uniform from when I was a stripper." and he says, "You can wear stripper clothes even when you're not stripping." And Job, like, in that moment, tears his pants off of himself.
His tearaway pants.
So Buster shows up to the wake thinking it's a birthday party in like this horrible looking World War II World War I German uniform with a rifle slung over his shoulder, and he thinks that this will make his family think he's still in the army.
Chest is wide open.
Right, it's super tight.
And was the world? Was it the hat, like a helmet with the like the spear on top?
Yeah. He goes, the shirt makes sense because the pants are so tight, I think is what his comment was.
George Michael's on another walk, and he happens across his grandfather, in the ground, who is just in a hole in the ground. And so he finds him first, and he decides he's going to hide him in the attic of the model home where they all live.
So that's our big family that he was actually alive. They didn't want to tell the family. Why was that?
Because if he's alive, then he's going to go to prison. Like,
that was why.
Because he's guessing his family will probably turn him in.
Yeah, he can't trust any of these idiots.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and
so
George
Michael's the only one that knows he's alive, and he hides him.
Yep.
But even then, the dad walks like Charlie Brown, George, because he thinks that what's the mom's name?
Lucille.
Lucille is with Oscar, and so he gets to do the Charlie Brown walk.
Yep.
And then, this is another funny line. It's Michael telling Lindsay, I think George Michael's hiding Anne in the attic. Because he thinks so George Michael has a plate of like hard-boiled eggs and other things that he's going to bring to his room because he said there's Grandpa's favorite things and I'm going to use them to remember him. And so because he thinks he's dead, Michael thinks that it's doing with Anne, and he's hiding Anne. And so he says, I think he's hiding Anne in the attic. And Lindsay goes, from who? The Nazis?
I wrote that line down too. That's just great.
Oh my God, that was perfect.
Well, and what I love is again with Anne, he's George Michael's up in the attic with Grandpa George, and Grandpa sees Anne, and he's unimpressed with her, and like George Michael even goes like, "Yeah, she's really funny," and
I can't stop thinking about her. Her?
Yeah, her. Like nobody's impressed with this girl, and George Michael just, he's so in love with her. It's just
I don't remember why he does it, but Tobias does a John Wayne impression, which is hilarious. But then he's looking for he needs some eggs, and he's looking for the eggs George Michael took. And then he walks away like Charlie Brown because he didn't have his eggs.
He didn't have his eggs, yes.
And then so I wrote this line down, and then I looked and this is probably my sister's favorite line of the episode too. So they're trying to get Lindsay to get out of her funk and do something, and you got to do this for your dad. And she says, I'm going to throw on a skirt, take off my underwear, and make my pop proud.
Right. Well, because maybe wants her mom to have an affair.
Yeah, she's trying to get her out.
She talked to Barry, the lawyer, and he told maybe I can get you emancipated from your parents if they're both having affairs. You can show that you're in a bad home life. So maybe is pushing her mom onto the ice guy, the caterer, so that she can be emancipated from her family. So she gets her mom to dress in a shirt that says slut.
Yeah, she wrote that down to it. So she comes down wearing her new clothes, and it's a red shirt. It just says slut on it in big letters.
Right.
Remember, this is supposed to be a wake.
A wake.
Yes. So Job's big thing for this is that he's trying to get back into the Magicians Guild.
Illusions.
Yes, because tricks are something prostitutes do for money. These are illusions; they're not tricks. So his plan is he's going to be buried in his father's stead, and
then come back.
It's a trick coffin, so he's going to escape the coffin, have it buried, and then come back, and that'll get him back into the Magicians Guild. Well, he gets
into Poof magazine.
Into Poof magazine, exactly. So he gets Buster to help him out with this. And there's this great scene where he's standing by the coffin, him and Buster, and he's announcing to the world what his plan is. And the music starts, and it's the final countdown.
Yeah.
And they're both up there dancing. And it's just the worst dancing with one of the worst songs. And of course, it all goes bad.
Oh, this is the funniest scene. This is like straight out of The Simpsons. That's where this it's like a cartoon.
That's a really good. Yes, that's a good
it's
analogy.
like the scene. It's like that scene
Live
where
action
Homer's getting airlifted out of the canyon and it keeps hitting his head, and they bring him
Yes.
up and they put him in the truck, and the truck takes off, goes 5 feet, hits a rock, falls, the door opens, and he falls back down.
Yes.
And then drops the casket on top of it, the coffin on top of it.
So Job's in the casket.
Yep.
And then the trapdoor opens, he falls out of the casket into the hole. Then the casket falls on top of him, and then immediately the big
bury him.
thing there just starts pouring dirt on top of it too.
Well, see, Buster was supposed to spin the coffin back around 180 degrees, but now it's come clear to him that this is actually a funeral for his father. Now that there's a casket involved. And so he doesn't spin the casket. Job falls out into the hole. And I think as the casket's falling down onto him, he says something about something's not right here.
And then he gets all the dirt buried on it.
He gets the casket lands on him, and the payloader puts the dirt right in on top of him. And isn't like the last line of the show between Michael and George Michael, and Michael goes, "All right, now let's go dig your uncle out of the ground," or something.
Yeah. I don't remember that one.
Yes, that was one of the last lines.
But after this, Michael goes to talk to the dad in the attic because he puts it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And then he tells everyone that the dad is alive, even though he told him not to tell anybody. But then we learn they all go up to the attic to see him, and he's gone, and it looks like he snuck out. And then we realize they did that on purpose because Michael knows he's still there, and he can keep the secret from everybody else for now because they think he's gone again.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ann and George Michael get back together at the end of the episode, much to the delight of Michael.
He was hiding inside one of the other magic acts that they had inside in the attic. It was like
the Aztec tomb.
Yes, that's what it was.
Yes.
So Ann and George Michael are back together, and then at the end, Job does indeed make the cover of Poof, but for his goof. He walks away like Charlie Brown.
Goof of the year.
Goof of the year.
Well, and the funny part is like at the beginning of the episode, George Michael and Ann have broken up, to which Michael's actually very happy about. But because of Michael's actions, the two of them get back together.
Yeah, that's the problem, is he's really responsible for it.
Right, and he's not real happy with himself.
But he has to act happy.
Right.
Oh, so that was well worth it. Do you have any more about those episodes, or?
I think we covered everything that I have written down here.
It has made me realize that I will indeed need to make this my next rewatch show when I get to my next one, because it's going to be totally worth it.
Yeah, no, I think we've covered it pretty well. Well done. So. Good choice, Danica.
Thanks, Danica. All right, then Gifford had the idea to finish the month off. Why don't you tell him?
Well, while I was watching this show, I've come to a lot of these characters are they're just so despicable and awful characters, and I do find myself getting a little upset watching this show, like because they're all just they're so horrible.
Yeah, there's a lot of shows like that.
Right. So I wanted to do a top 5 list of characters that you don't like, or you hate, or you think are dumb, or whatever.
You originally just said they were annoying.
Yeah, annoying, whatever.
Yeah, it's like you're changing the criteria now.
Out of sitcoms over the years.
But to clarify, so my question to Gifford was, are they annoying characters on the show to other people, or are they people that annoy us as the viewer?
That was my question.
And you said,
are they deliberately annoying? That's my question.
You wanted it to be characters that we find annoying, that we don't like watching, or just kind of drive us crazy.
Yes, that is correct. Characters that kind of drive you.
And some can kind of fit into both of those categories too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, I just kind of went through a bunch of sitcoms that I love. And again, this isn't an indictment on the actor. The actors in all these cases are great actors, and they need to be great actors in order to elicit this response from me. So I'll just go ahead and go first here.
You go first.
So I put down one honorable mention. That is Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory. I watched. My wife loves watching The Big Bang Theory. It's just good to have on at the end of the day. You can be on your phone, just a nice, funny show in the background. But I'll sit down and watch it with her.
Can't you just watch a show with your family without being on the phone?
Shut up, Dad.
Thanks, Pete.
I will sit and watch it with her, and so many times I go, God, Sheldon's such a jerk. Like, he's such a D-bag to everybody. He's so uppity and thinks he's always the smartest at everything. So he was my honorable mention. My number 5 is Emily from Friends. I just never got the character.
Emily.
Not that she's a horrible person. Obviously, Ross loves her enough to get married, but can't remember her name at the moment of truth. But just did not care for her character. My number 4 is Job from Arrested Development. He is constantly doing everything he can to undermine Michael. He believes he is so much better than what he is at everything. He just, again, the business is going under, and he goes out and buys a corporate boat.
He's a classic fool.
Yes, he is. My number 3 is Gabe from The Office. Just never later in the series.
Gabe, yeah, I kind of like Gabe. I think he's funny.
Could not handle that guy. Just didn't care.
I have different Office characters on mine, but
yeah,
I didn't think about him.
My number 2 is Rafi from The League.
Who was that? I watched The League. I've forgotten it.
He was kind of the crazy guy.
Oh, is that Mantzoukas?
Is that his name?
Jason Mantzoukas?
I think you're right.
Okay. Well, he's great in everything.
Honestly, I think that character, every time he was on an episode, I always thought those episodes were less than...
I think on that series, I think I remember agreeing with you, but that Jason Mantzoukas is he is brilliant. He
was great on Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yes. Parks and Rec, Dennis Feinstein.
Mm-hmm. So again, great actor, loved the actor, did not like Rafi. And my number
I think he was really over the top on that show, even beyond what it was on cable, and he could do even more. I agree. He sucked.
It was a little rough. And my number 1, in my opinion, one of the most evil characters in sitcom history is Marie Barone from Everybody Loves Raymond. She was the grandmother, Raymond's mom. She was just always mean to Raymond's wife. Anything she could do to undercut Raymond's wife, she would do. She would not be as preferential to the brother on the show. She was just a mean person, and she, again, great character. Wonderful actress. But
she was in Christmas Vacation, right?
Yep, yeah, she was. She was.
And she was mean there too. She was.
Yeah, it's kind of the same kind of role. Yep.
Great character, but she was so mean. So that's my list.
All right.
Pete, do you want me to go next, or did you come up with a list? Or
I got a list of 5 that I can go with, and then we can wrap with you because I think you have a longer list, right? So
I do. I have categories.
So of course you do.
Well, Gifford gave me this.
I love that you can't.
I'll go through
it. I'll run through mine. So number 5 on my list. Do you remember, Gifford? I think you used to watch the show Married with Children, right? I don't know if Brad did as much, but the next door neighbor, Marcy Darcy.
Oh yeah, I've seen plenty of Married with
Children. She was mousy and just she annoyed the hell out of me on the show. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't even. It wasn't. She was supposed to be annoying, but she was just too annoying. It just bothered me when she came on the screen.
Right, and both of her husbands on the show, I loved her husbands, Steve and who is the one later? Jefferson. Loved the husbands.
Yes. But number 4, I had Screech. That's probably one that a lot of people might have.
That's coming up. Yep.
Screech from Saved by the Bell. Number 3, I might get a little blowback from the audience on this one. Because it's a great show. A lot of people love this character, I know. But I actually thought Carla on Cheers was pretty annoying. She was just sort of like, if you really watch her as an actress, I mean, and the lines they gave her, she would just be walking by, throw a line out there, and then walk away.
Well, those were when she was at her best.
Yeah, but
see, I would take Diane over.
It's the
Carla.
episodes that like revolve more around Carla or her family where it was too much. Where I agree, she's hit and miss.
Yeah,
but I disagree with your example.
Sure.
Okay, well, sorry.
It's characters that annoyed Pete, not not Brad or you or this is Pete's list.
It's a podcast. We are giving our opinions on what we say.
Yes. Fact. We are giving our opinions.
The next one is a totally deliberately annoying character, and he just did a wonderful job. Perfect for this role. And Brad, I'm sure you probably have him on one of your lists too, one of your many categories. Newman. Yes. I mean, he was the perfect villain because Seinfeld needed a villain. That was his Lex Luthor. Seinfeld is a Superman guy, and that was just sort of his arch enemy, and it was perfect for the show. I loved him and what he did, but he was a perfect annoying character. Lastly, number 1, a lot of America loved him, and he was a deliberately annoying character, but I actually found him annoying. He was funny at first, but then it got really, really old real quick. That was Steve Urkel.
Steve Urkel. I was wondering where Urkel was at on your list. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So, I don't think I ever found Steve Urkel funny.
I did at first, like the first couple of episodes.
I mean, I didn't really watch the show, so
yeah, I didn't watch the show all that much, but it was funny for a little bit. But then when it went on year after year,
well, and I mean, from what I know about the show, I remember. I mean, he went from kind of this bit character to like, oh, he's the star now.
Yeah.
And
he is the show. Yeah.
Totally overdone.
What did you think of Stefan, his cousin, right? He was the
I don't remember
suave.
that.
When
oh God, you mean played by Jaleel White still?
Jaleel White,
the same
guy.
God,
I kind of know of that.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
All right. I liked your list, Pete. That's excellent.
Thank you. I whipped it together pretty quickly there.
Yeah. So my first category is the most overlap with you guys. These are characters who they're meant to be annoying to everybody on the show, and so they can be really annoying, but you still like them because they're like integral to the show. And so I have Newman, Sheldon, and I had Diane Gifford from Cheers, because those are people that are just annoying. But I still, the show doesn't exist without them.
Right, you need them, and you.
Although the Cheers did exist without Diane, so that's kind of not really true. But
and I get where you're coming from with Newman, but every time Newman came on the screen, it was like, oh yes. And you.
Well, no, I'm saying these are the ones that
that was by design.
Yeah. You just wait for the hello Newman. It's just so great.
My next category is these are characters who I thought, and Pete, you brought, it's like Urkel. These are characters who I loved at first and thought they were just hilarious or great. But as the course of the show went on, sometimes you grew to hate them. And so Dwight Schrute, I think, fits that. And Andy Bernard, too. Both those guys.
I can see Andy.
Dwight was amazing, but there were episodes and things that were so far over the top. And it was like, it's just too much. And so they both became annoying to me. Likewise, Cam on Modern Family. I mean, when that show started, he was like the greatest thing ever, and I thought he became completely annoying.
Yep.
One that I still liked but became annoying is Charles Boyle from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I liked him a lot more than those first 3, but his character just kept getting more and more like out there,
crazier and crazier, just pushing.
And then another one who I liked at first, but she was never a good person, and it just got worse and worse, is Selena Meyer in Veep. She's a human being.
Yes. Well, who is a good person? Well, I suppose
on Veep, not really anybody.
Tony Hale's character.
Yeah, he means well.
He's kind of like Buster in Arrested Development. Yeah. He means well. Yeah. Not overtly or on purpose mean or stupid.
My third one is a character who doesn't really fit any category, But he is a character I love on a show I love that we just talked about. But Marshall on How I Met Your Mother went through a stretch about midway through where after his dad died, and I think he was out of work, and he just became so depressing. And every time he came on the screen, it was like, oh my God, what have you done to this guy? And I think he snaps out of it again by the end. But there was a long stretch where when I rewatched it last year, I'm like, ugh, I don't like Marshall right now anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth category are people who I never liked on. These are the really annoying ones that I never liked on any show. Sandra on The Cosby Show, waste of a character, not necessary. Susie Essman on Curb Your Enthusiasm. She might be one of the most villainous, awful people.
Yeah, she's pretty bad.
Screech, Pete, good call.
Thank you.
And you'll like this one too, Pete. Jennifer on Family Ties, Tina Yothers.
Oh, yeah.
Again, who cares about Jennifer?
Good one.
And then my last category is saved for one person who was literally a show killer and one of the worst characters of all time on one of my all-time favorite shows, Cousin Oliver on The Brady Bunch.
Oh, yeah.
We'll never get a dumber, more terrible character, more worthless than Cousin Oliver, and he was on like 5 episodes and his show ended, and that was that.
He's a show killer. Oh, my God.
So.
That is great.
Great idea.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
That was good. Is that it? Did we just wrap up another episode?
That wraps up a year.
Oh, that does. We get to close the yearbook with a little Preacher Row.
Excellent. Lay it on me.
All right, let's put it on. Apologies to Tina Yothers if you're listening.
and others.
And
others.
And the Oliver kid.
Yep.
No apologies to Oliver.
Oh, okay.
No.
You can rot in hell.
We're not going to have him on this show because he'll ruin our show.
Right. Can I do that?
All right. Thanks, everybody.
We'll see ya.
Bye.
No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. And start to me on my back. I turn it up to you. I'm scared but there's nothing I can do. Hang high if you want to.